I started my law degree when I had just turned 17. Instead of finishing off my 6th year at high school, I decided to leave after 5th year and step straight into one of the most academically challenging universities in the country. I had no legal experience and had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I graduated with first class honours after 4 years of studying, and there are a whole lot of things that I wish I'd known before starting my degree, and I'm hoping that this video can answer some of those questions for you. I applied to study law at university, and in spring 2020 I was accepted into my first choice university to study Scots Law at the University of Edinburgh. This was also the point at which the COVID-19 pandemic hit, so my first and second years at university looked nothing like what we expected it to look like. Most of my classes were online pre-recorded lectures. For those 2 years I was only on campus maybe once or twice a week for classes, and I had chosen to stay at home in the countryside instead of moving into halls. I'd expected to be on campus, get to know my year group and the classwork and also my professors. So I think for me, starting a degree from a bedroom was very different, as you didn't really know what was expected from you at university, and you also didn't necessarily have that support system which comes with being on campus, interacting with your lecturers and other students. However, I did just sort of spend my first and second years of university just fumbling about at home trying to work out how to do a law degree. Going into a law degree, I expected the workload to be very heavy and the content to be difficult, but I think when it came to it, I found the content was slightly easier to get my head around. I just think it was the volume of information that we had to take in and the sort of amount of work that I found particularly difficult. I think because there was so much content and during the time in COVID there was pretty few contact hours, I think it was just difficult to prioritise and work out what needed done and what not so much. And by the time the exams came around in my first and second year, it definitely just left me feeling pretty burnt out and ready for a proper break. But aside from the studying, I decided that I was going to stay at home for my degree instead of moving into halls. I think I'd imagined myself at the start doing this big university move out. However, I actually only live about 40 minutes from campus, so I think in hindsight it was definitely the right decision to stay at home for me. I think financially it's made a massive amount of sense for me because I've been lucky enough to graduate without any debt, which I know is not the case for everyone. However, I do think that that experience of staying at home did come with some drawbacks, in that you weren't on campus all the time and you didn't necessarily get to have that same student life experience all of the time. But in hindsight, I found it's definitely helped me out when the university and my work's been very busy, so that I could just come home and relax and focus on my studies a little bit. It was in my 3rd and 4th years of university that my experience completely changed. I just started to meet a lot of the people on my course and also just be able to really enjoy student life in the city and enjoy being in Edinburgh. I think for me it really just did feel like my first year at uni, but I guess 2 years late. In my honours years, I switched completely to essay-based subjects where you had one big essay at the end of the year instead of exams. Instead of specialising down, I decided to just keep it a wide variety of areas that I was really interested in. So I really chose things that I thought I'd enjoy and expand my knowledge. During these 2 years, I was able to deep dive into topics, doing legal research. I think the style of essay-based learning suited me much better. And similarly with my dissertation, a lot of people had very clear ideas, and this is something that I didn't necessarily have at first. You have to draw your dissertation from one of your 3rd year studies, and I didn't particularly have anything that stood out to me in terms of topics for a dissertation, but in the end one line from a lecture really stood out to me and I ran with that topic from a dissertation, and that research was a bit of a passion project. It was an area that was relatively under-researched and it was really interesting to just look at things from a bit more of a policy angle rather than deep dense kind of statute law. After 2 years of exams, finally finding things that I was interested and passionate about really added to my experience. During my 3rd year, I actually started to find out how university works. From being back on campus, I was able to have those wider networks of students and tutors and also my professors. So from there it was much easier to sort of understand what I was meant to be doing and the timeline for it. So for example, in our 3rd year we apply to internships, which will eventually hopefully lead to securing a traineeship, which is where that you would do your final part of your professional qualifications to become a solicitor in Scotland. I was lucky enough to be able to secure an internship and also through that get my traineeship. So I'm super grateful that that worked out the way it did, as it allowed me to just finish off my learning with a little bit less stress, and it also just offered a bit of certainty and something to look towards at the end of my studies. During my final years, I found I got in a much better rhythm. I was able to take on more extracurricular things. I was one of the co-editors-in-chief of the Student Law Review, and I also enjoyed working with the marketing team at the university as my student job. So my final few years of my degree just offered some really fun and interesting opportunities. And personally, I found having a little bit more of that support system really improved my experience and allowed me to have someone to go to if I ever had any questions about the work I was doing, which was something I didn't necessarily have in my first few years. And I think having that network really improved my decisions in course choosing and meant that I got the most from my final few years of university, and I also managed to get some really invaluable advice going forward into my future career. In terms of studying at the University of Edinburgh, the campus is absolutely gorgeous and I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. Old College, where the law school is based, is my favourite building on campus. It's absolutely gorgeous and I really feel super lucky to have had the chance to study there, both for my degree and in my diploma. I spent a lot of time there studying in Old College, but there are also loads of brilliant study spots on campus, like the main library, and now the Futures Institute is open, and there's so many quiet little places that I really enjoyed going to just lock into my work and try and get a lot done. The city itself is also so gorgeous and it's very walkable and everything that you need is on your doorstep. I've actually spent the last few years here in Edinburgh as well, and I'm about to start my training contract here too, so I think the fact I've stayed for so long definitely shows how much I've loved the city, and I think compared to going to a campus uni, it was definitely the right choice for me. And if I was to do it again, I'd definitely still be in a city university and at Edinburgh. To get a first, I worked extremely hard throughout, but I think some of the stuff that helped me was being really organised and having good processes in place. Especially during essay subjects, my notes were super detailed and I always colour coded my notes with what the lecturer said, what the handout was, my further reading, and also what I was learning in the tutorials. So I ended up having a massive amount of notes to draw upon when it did come to my final essay topics, and I think that really helped for me instead of starting from scratch each time an essay question came out. Although I do think my degree came at a little bit of a cost. I didn't always have the best work-life balance and I spent a lot of really long days working, and I wasn't the best at sort of knowing when to switch off from the work. I think in hindsight I would have loved to know exactly what was kind of required to get a first in terms of effort levels, as I think working all the time definitely had a bit of an impact on my health, and it just meant that I didn't necessarily get the right balance between enjoying student life and getting good grades. But I did manage to get my first, so it was sort of all worth it. But I think if I was to do it again, I'd definitely have a little bit more of a measured approach and just try and really make a conscious effort to enjoy student life a little bit more and have a better work-life balance. I really did find that my first 2 years dragged a lot and I wasn't necessarily enjoying it that much. However, my final 2 years absolutely flew by, and I think if I was to do it again, I'd just soak it up and make the most of student life while I had it. And I think just being on campus really made things feel like they went super fast, and in the end I did actually really enjoy my degree and particularly studying at Edinburgh. So after graduating, I took a year out and did a bit of work in law reform, and this year I went back to finish off my studies and do my diploma in legal practice, and I'm now about to graduate from the university for the second time in a few weeks time and start my traineeship in August. So my student era is almost officially done. So if you are thinking about studying law or at Edinburgh University, or if you just have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm now going into a whole new chapter of starting my legal career properly and life after university. So if you're interested in following along, just hit subscribe. I hope this video has been useful and I will catch up with you soon.